Welcome. This is Environmental Law, 3rd year, Semester 1. We are examining Unit 3, the law relating to the preservation, conservation, and protection of forests. We will begin our analysis with the foundational principles. The legal framework for forest protection originates from the supreme law of the land, the Constitution of India, and is supported by long-standing moral mandates. The constitutional mandate is explicit. Article 48A, Protection and Improvement of Environment and Safeguarding of Forests and Wildlife, states, "The state shall endeavor to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forests and wildlife of the country." Furthermore, Article 51A, G, establishes a fundamental duty for every citizen of India to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. These constitutional duties are built upon foundational legal maxims. The first, sic utere tuo ut alienum non laedas, translates to, use your property so as not to injure that of another. The second, Vruksho Rakshita Rakshataha, translates to, if you protect the trees will protect you. These principles underscore the moral and legal basis for forest conservation. Having established the constitutional basis, we now proceed to the specific statutory and policy frameworks. These instruments translate constitutional ideals into enforceable legal standards, marking a clear shift from regulation towards conservation. The central statute is the Forest Conservation Act of 1980. Section 2, Restriction on the De-Reservation of Forests or Use of Forest Land for Non-Forest Purpose, provides, notwithstanding anything contained in any other law for the time being in force in a state, no state government or other authority shall make, except with the prior approval of the central government, any order directing I, that any reserve forest shall cease to be reserved. 2. That any forest land may be used for any non-forest purpose. 3. That any forest land may be assigned by way of lease or otherwise to any private person. This section is the critical checkpoint. Let us break down the legislative shift. Ecologically, forests are vital for oxygen production, climate regulation, and biodiversity. The previous legislation, the Indian Forest Act of 1927, was primarily focused on revenue generation from timber and transit fees. The Forest Conservation Act of 1980 represents a fundamental change in legislative intent, prioritizing conservation and ecological balance over commercial exploitation. Examining policy evolution, we first look at the forest policy of 1952. Its primary feature was a target to bring 33% of India's total land area under forest cover. Its objectives included increasing forest productivity and promoting social forestry through farm forestry and community forestry. However, the outcome was that the policy largely failed to achieve its stated objectives. In response, the new forest policy of 1988 initiated a paradigm shift. Its new priorities were clear. It formally recognized the role of tribal communities in forest protection, discouraged the establishment of forest-based industries, aimed to remove private contractors from forest operations, and strictly prohibited the conversion of forest land to non-forest uses to meet the 33% target. A direct comparison reveals the evolution in policy. The 1952 policy focus was on revenue and industry. By contrast, the 1988 policy focus shifted entirely to conservation and the active involvement of tribal communities, recognizing their symbiotic relationship with the forests. The essential protection mechanisms under this framework include the declaration of reserved forests and the mandatory prior approval from the central government as stipulated in Section 2. An advisory committee aids this process. However, there are limitations and exceptions, specifically for the recognized rights of tribal communities and their traditional needs for resources like firewood. We will now turn our attention to judicial precedents. The interpretation of these statutes and policies by the Supreme Court has been instrumental in shaping the enforcement and application of forest conservation law. The central question for our review is, how has the Supreme Court interpreted these constitutional and statutory mandates? The following landmark cases provide the answer. We begin with the landmark case of T.N. Godavarman Thirumal Kapad v. Union of India, cited as 1997 2 Supreme Court Cases 267. The bench comprised Justices J.S. Verma, B.N. Kirpal, and S.P. Kirtikar. The facts concerned widespread indiscriminate felling of trees. The issue was whether the Forest Conservation Act 1980 applied only to reserve forests or to all forests. The ratio decidendi established that the term forest must be understood according to its dictionary meaning, making the act applicable to all forests, irrespective of ownership or classification. The final decision was that all ongoing non-forest activity in any forest without central government approval must cease forthwith. Next, we consider Rural Litigation and Entitlement Kendra versus State of Uttar Pradesh, cited as All India Reporter 1987 Supreme Court 359. The bench was led by Chief Justice P.N. Bhagwati. The facts involved ecological damage in the Doon Valley due to limestone quarrying. The issue was whether mining operations should be permitted at the cost of environmental degradation. The ratio decidendi held that natural resources are permanent assets of mankind and are not to be exhausted by one generation, establishing the principle of intergenerational equity. The final decision was in order for the closure of the mining operations. The third case is Ambika Quarries Limited versus State of Gujarat, cited as All India Reporter 1987 Supreme Court 1073. The bench comprised Justices Sabyasachi Mukherjee and K.N. Singh. The facts involved the non-renewal of a mining lease located within a reserved forest. The issue was whether the state had a legal obligation to renew the lease. The ratio decidendi affirmed that the state's duty to the community to prevent ecological damage takes precedence over any obligation to an individual. The final decision was that the refusal to renew the lease was justified to protect the forest. Let us now synthesize these principles and examine their practical application. This section bridges the gap between legal theory and on-the-ground enforcement. Consider these practical scenarios. First, railway construction. If trees are felled without approval, a public interest litigation can be filed to halt the activity. Second, housing development. If an authority illegally sanctions construction in a forest area, the permissions are void ab initio. Third, tribal livelihood. The law must balance conservation mandates with the legitimate livelihood needs of tribal communities residing within protected areas. The procedural logic for forest conservation follows a clear map. Step 1, land identification to determine if it is a protected forest. Step 2, activity classification to determine if it is a non-forest use. Step 3, approval verification to check for prior approval from the central government. Step 4, committee review by the advisory body. Step 5, impact assessment of the environmental consequences. Step 6, legal result, which, if approval is absent, is the cessation of the activity and mandatory restoration of the land. For the purpose of revision, these are the must-know points. The constitutional duty to protect forests is enshrined in Articles 48A and 51AG. The Forest Conservation Act 1980 is the primary statute, with Section 2 being its operative part. Forest policy has shifted from revenue generation 1952 to conservation and tribal rights 1988. Finally, key judicial principles include the broad definition of forest and the doctrine of intergenerational equity. In summary, the legal framework protecting our forests is a composite structure of constitutional duties, stringent statutory requirements under Section 2, and judicially affirmed principles that prioritize conservation and recognize tribal rights. This concludes our examination of the law relating to the preservation, conservation, and protection of forests.